Hello, students. Today we're going to start a new chapter. It's all about polynomials and factoring. So this is all going to be brand new stuff for you, and we are beginning to touch the beginning topics of Algebra 2 and starting this new section. So 10.1 is going to be specifically about adding and subtracting polynomials. And so let's start on page 568 together. They say, how large is the walkway around a pool? And it says in example 5, we will use subtraction of polynomials to find the area of a walkway around a pool. All right below the picture it says a monomial. And that may be a new word for you. I don't know. But a monomial is a, think about the word mono. What does that mean? Mono means one, right? So a monomial is a number, variable, or product of a number, or one or more variables with a whole number. It says the following expressions are monomials. It's really what we talk about like when we say one term, but it can have a whole lot of stuff on it. Okay, so 8 is a monomial. Negative 2x is a monomial. So, so things can be kind of clumped together with multiplication and division, but addition and subtraction is where you separate the terms. So all of these things are considered one term. Okay, and so these are all considered monomials. When we're talking about the degree of a monomial, we're talking about the degrees of all of the exponents added up together. So, for instance, the degree of this term, this is a monomial term, 3x squared, well, the highest degree on here is a 2. So this is considered a second degree monomial. If I had negative 6z to the fourth power, the degree here would be 4. And what do you think the degree of just a plain old number is? Well, if it had a variable term, the variable term would be to the 0 power, right? Because anything to the 0 power is equal to 1. So that means that when you see just a pure number, that's a 0 degree term. Okay, because it would have like a little invisible variable to the 0 power next to it. Now, if you have something that has more than one variable in it, this is still a monomial. 3x squared y is an example. This is still a monomial, even though they got two variables because they're put together by multiplication. But if you want to figure out the degree of this, you have to add the degrees of all the variables. So you really have an invisible 1 here. So this really ends up being degree 3. Okay. All right. So let's start with example 1 and kind of work through this. All right. Example 1 says state the degree of the monomial. So in example 1, A, they're saying we got negative 5x to the fourth. So what degree is that? Well, that's going to be 4, right? So that's fourth degree. Pretty easy peasy. All right. B, 1/2 b cubed. So that's going to be third degree, right? All right. C, we got 12. All right, so just a plain old number. That means that you need to envision, some variable next to it to the 0 power. So this is going to be 0 degree. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so let's do the checkpoint together. Okay, here we go. All right, so looking at the checkpoint, number 1, and they're asking us to state the degree of the monomial. We get 6x cubed. So what degree is that? Well, third degree, right? All right, number 2, we have 4p. All right, so what little invisible exponent is on here? A little invisible 1. So this is going to be first degree. Okay, number 3, negative 10. Again, one of these pure numbers, so it's got a little invisible variable to the 0 power. So this is going to be 0 degree, right? And then lastly, we have negative 3a to the fifth. Well, that's going to be fifth degree. Okay. All right, so now you've learned about monomials. So that's just one term. Now let's look at the top of page 569. We're going to talk about polynomials here. Okay, so let's read this together at the top of the page. A polynomial, now keep in mind, think about the word poly. What does polynomial mean? What does poly mean? Well, when you see the word poly, I think it comes from the Greek, but don't quote me on that. I think it means many. Okay, and nomial terms. That's what this means. Okay. All right. So a polynomial is a monomial or sum of monomials. A polynomial such as this. Okay. So x squared plus, let's say negative 4x plus, and generally speaking, we're not going to write it like this, but what they're saying is that, we're actually going to write it like this, right? We're going to say x squared minus 4x minus 5x, 5, what they're trying to say here is that terms are separated by plus signs, okay? So I can always rewrite something like this into this form, right? And have these all separated by plus signs by saying plus and minus, right? Nowadays, when we write these, we just streamline these here. But I just want you to realize that, of course, that whatever sign is in front of the term, it gives it to the term after it, right? So the official definition of polynomial is it says, for instance, like a polynomial is a sum of monomials. Remember, that was the official definition. Sum of monomials was one of the things it could be, right? And the reason they say that it could be the sum of monomials is because I can rewrite any polynomial like this with plus signs in there. And so how many terms are there? Well, the terms are actually separated by the plus sign. So in this case, I have 3 terms here. Now, we don't tend to write it like this. We're going to start writing it like this, but this is still 3 terms, and technically they are all separated by sum, because I could rewrite this as plus a minus and plus a minus. Okay, now let's read right below. It says 4x cubed. Okay, that's a monomial, slash polynomial. Technically, it's just a monomial, but, polynomial can be just one monomial. X cubed minus 8 is a polynomial, right? You got 2 terms, x cubed minus 8. I could write this as plus a minus 8, right? So here's a term and there's a term, okay? And then the other one is 7x squared minus 4x plus 6. Again, I could write this as plus a minus. So this is a term, 7x squared is a term, minus 4x is a term, and positive 6 is a term. All right, now let's take a little further. We're going to, a polynomial with 2 terms is a binomial. All right, think about bicycle, right? It has 2 wheels. So bi means 2, and so a binomial is a 2-termed polynomial. So, for example, that's a binomial. X cubed plus a minus 8. Of course, we'd write it like x cubed minus 8. Okay, one term here, x cubed. The second term is going to be minus 8. Okay. All right, now polynomial of 3 terms. Think about tricycle, right? What does tri mean? It means 3. So trinomial is going to have 3 terms. And so, so this right here is an example of a trinomial. I've got 3 terms in it. Okay, and then now it says polynomials usually written in standard form. So the standard form of a polynomial, all right, is you're going to write it. It means that the terms are arranged in decreasing order from largest exponent to smallest exponent. We say standard form, we say that it's written in descending degrees is another way to say that, descending degrees. In other words, you're going to write the highest term first, going down, so let's say you had, 5th degree polynomial, you had x fifth plus, 2x to the 4th minus 3x cubed plus 2x minus 1. I'm just making one up, okay? Now notice, this is considered standard form because you got 5, 4, 3. Oh, I don't have a cubic thing, but that's all right. I mean a square term, but that's all right. This is to the first power and then down to 0. Okay, so it's written in descending degrees to make it in standard form. All right, now it says the degree of a polynomial in one variable is the largest exponent of that variable. So if I were to look at this and I say, well, what's the degree of this? Well, the degree of this whole polynomial, I look at the highest degree, which is this, 5. So I would say that's a 5th degree polynomial. All right, now, here we go. And let's clear the page. Okay. Now, why don't you pause this right now and do the check. Oh, no, actually, well, let me do example 2 first before we do the checkpoint. Example 2. All right, so it says identify the polynomials. They want degree, okay? They want the degree name. They say ID'd by degree, okay? So in other words, and I'm going to go over this here in a second. There's a term for each type of degree. So and we'll go over that. And then it's also going to be ID'd by number of terms. Okay, and that's going to be whether or not you have a monomial, binomial, trinomial. Okay, and they don't seem to go beyond that in terms of number of terms, although it's possible to have 5 and 10, infinite number of terms, but in terms of them having like an official name. All right, so A says 6. Okay, so just the plain old number 6. Well, what degree is that? Well, that's if it had the little invisible variable to the 0 power, right? So that's going to be 0 degree. Now, what kind of they're really talking about functions here. They talk about what degree has a 0 degree. What's that called? Well, think about when I have a line and I graph it and I say y equals 6, something like that. What does that mean? Well, that means I have a horizontal line, right? Going 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, going through this, y equals 6. Well, think about what is this line doing? It's remaining constant, isn't it? It's not really changing. It's just, it's flat. It's like, when you're riding on your bike on flat ground, right? It's the slope. There's no slope. It's unchanging, right? So when we have something that's a 0 degree, we call that a constant function, okay? That's called a constant function. Okay, and partly it's because it would graph into a horizontal line that's unchanging. It's constant. It doesn't matter what your input is. The output is always the same. All right, in terms of this, how many terms do I have here? Well, I just have one term, right? So if it's one term, what do we call that? We call that a monomial, right? A monomial. All right. All right, number B. Okay, 3x plus 1. All right, what's my highest degree term? Well, it's the x, right? What kind of exponent does it have on it? It has like a little invisible 1, doesn't it? So it's first degree. All right, now if you were to graph this, what would you graph this into? What would it look like? Well, it would look like a line. So guess what we call that? First degree equations are called linear functions, really. They're really linear functions. Okay? So it's a linear function. The book is not using the word function here, but that's really kind of what this is. Okay, and it says how many terms are here? Well, I got 1 term, 2 terms. So guess what that is? A binomial. Okay, now let's do C. Okay, negative x squared plus 2x minus 5. All right, so what's my highest degree term? Well, it's this one, right? So the highest degree is 2. All right, and what's the highest degree? What is the name of the function that has the highest degree of 2? Right? We just covered that, right? In this past chapter, in chapter 9. That's a quadratic, right? So this is a quadratic function. If the highest degree is 2, it's a quadratic. And what does it look like when you graph it? Right? It looks like a parabola. All right, it can be like that, up or down. All right, how many terms do we have here? Well, I got 1, 2, 3. That's a trinomial. Yeah, and what are my terms anyway? Well, it's going to be negative x squared, 2x, and then this minus sign goes with this, right? Because this is really technically plus and minus. So this third term is a minus 5. All right, last one for example 2. Okay, 4x cubed minus 8x. Okay, highest degree, that's this guy, right? So it's 3. And what do we call that? We're going to call that a cubic function. Okay, and when you graph it, it's going to look, we call it, looks like a snake, kind of. It can do something like this, or it can come up high and go down. It's, put it in your calculator if you're interested. Go into the y equals button and hit y equals x cubed and graph that. See what you get. It's kind of interesting. It's a cubic function. All right, so in this case, how many terms do we have here? Well, we got a plus, a minus that, right? So that's 4x and negative 8x. Those are my terms. I got 2 of those. So this thing is a binomial. Okay, so it's a cubic binomial. All right, so that is it for example 2. Go ahead and do the checkpoint and come back and see me in the next video, and we'll go over the checkpoint.